Hey everyone, this is Haley from Cartooniverse. Today, I have an interesting analysis all about one of the newest Homeworld gems, Holly Blue Agate. To start, we are going to be asking the question, just who is this gem? Holly Blue is the second Homeworld character introduced affiliated with Homeworld and a specific diamond. The first character was Peridot. The difference in affiliation is that while the Rubies openly talk about their service to Yellow Diamond, they don't share deep investment that Holly Blue and Peridot have, shown in the story. They don't idolize their diamonds. This is likely because many of the soldiers we've seen were either once affiliated with Pink Diamond or are too young to remember her. It's interesting looking at her character knowing what we do about Peridot now, because people wanted Peridot to reform. In contrast, Holly Blue has had mixed reactions, and it'd be worthwhile to explore why. First up is her gem placement, which reveals her strengths and weaknesses. Going by anatomy, the back of the skull is where the occipital lobe of the brain is located. The occipital lobe functions not necessarily to let us see, but to help us make sense of what we're seeing. That is, the occipital lobe helps us interpret and comprehend the images that our eyes are looking at. And there's something interesting about every single moment we get to see Holly Blue's gem in Gem Heist, when she's first introduced. In those moments, she sees the crystal gems just as they're doing something they're not supposed to, and each time, she misinterprets what happens, and they don't get caught. The very first time we see her gem is when the crystal gems just arrive and try to convince the Amethyst of their credibility. That Sapphire isn't a disgraced Homeworld defector, and that she's the leader of the entire operation, bringing a new human for Blue Diamond Zoo. Holly Blue buys into this narrative completely and leads them exactly where they want to go. The second time is immediately after Pearl's order to open the first door. Pearl makes a very un-Pearl-like face at Holly, who, with her back turned, ignores it unknowingly, saving Pearl and Sapphire from what could have been a heated questioning. The third time, she and Sapphire walk in on the other crystal gems trying to destroy the door. And they look so obviously guilty, but Holly blames it on the Amethyst instead. Close to the end of the episode, we have one more shot of her gem as the Amethyst takes Steven away and he's very loudly resisting. We know that's a sign of the upturn that Steven causes later on, but Holly interprets it as a sign that things are running smoothly and going to be fine. Note that none of these circumstances immediately signal to Holly that things are going wrong. The zoo is a far-off outpost that has been very low-key. Working there must be very quiet, save the occasional visit from Blue Diamond. Holly wouldn't be expecting trouble, and that tinges the way she processes what goes on around her. On a normal day, the Amethyst might pull a few pranks, Holly would make them clean up, and then they train for a while. Holly goes around inspecting everything, and it's boring. So when a noble gem shows up, Holly wants things to be the best they can be. It's a point in how our context tinge how we interpret what our senses tell us. In experiencing the world, there's definitely going to be an element of subjectivity. No two people experience the same scenario the same way, because just from a physical standpoint, they're never really in the same place at the same time. This is especially true for Holly. Her gem is behind her. That means she wants to be on top of everything, but she doesn't face things directly when interacting with them. She's always just a little bit behind on what's going on. Additionally, there's already a discrepancy between what she sees and what she makes of it. It implies that she's out of touch with what's happening on the ground. Extending it further, she's a bit out of touch with herself. Functioning at her best, she'd be very perceptive, but that gut feeling has to be cultivated. And that gut feeling has been dulled because of years of being with the same people doing the same thing every single day. Being out of touch is a very real possibility. Holly is in the middle of nowhere. And she doesn't get to interact with a lot of gems, and the gems she does interact with are the ones she's been with for thousands of years, from very early on in their lives. She's probably amazing at telling what the Amethyst is up to. She's always suspicious of them, and that's maybe because they've given her a reason to believe something is always brewing. If the mischievous character of her own Amethyst is anything to go by, poking fun at Holly's uptight nature is something that they'd be doing very frequently, even before the crystal gems came. Holly can probably tell what the Amethysts are plotting even at a glance. She's attuned to them, whether she wants to be or not. And that leads to the next point, which is Holly has a middle manager position on Homeworld. Holly gives off a matronly vibe. Even asking the quartzes to stand up straighter and salute properly, these are little things that we realize the diamonds don't really care too much about when actually meeting them. These are things that Holly thinks the diamonds care about. And that gives us some insight into the lore that surrounds the diamonds. At some point, people sort of assumed this or that was how to show respect for their leaders. Given how the diamonds act, It's doubtful that at a particular point in time, the diamonds codified the exact angles of how they should be saluted, and for how long, and for what to say specifically. But some gems may have felt that the diamonds should be revered, and the practice may have evolved to become more and more complex. It's also a case of gems creating rules and standards for themselves, as most complex civilizations do. Back to the matronly impression of Holly, it speaks a lot about the position she was put in. The quartzes under her watch came fresh from Earth, fresh from the war, when they'd been around for only a relatively short time. That chaotic environment was most of what they'd known for their formative years. Then they were whisked away into the zoo. Something worth considering is that the Earth gems might be kept in the zoo for the same reasons humans are, to preserve Pink Diamond's memory. After all, these gems could do more good somewhere else. Instead, they're guarding a tower that only Blue Diamond visits. And the purpose for that may very well be lumping them together with everything that was once Pink Diamond's domain. It's part of Blue Diamond's mourning and self-punishing process, and Holly's role there is quite literally to whip them all into shape. These gems are quartzes without a commander, because Pink Diamond fell in war. Agates, in general, are probably a matron-like gem. They're deliberately put in charge of certain groups to train them and organize them. And yes, one way to phrase that could be to terrify, because it entails having them listening to you, but that influence could be exerted in a very different way. Because from what we've seen, the Amethyst, despite everything, aren't afraid of Holly Blue at all. It's been thousands of years and she's still correcting them on something as basic as posture. Thousands of times Blue Diamond has visited, and she still can't trust them to welcome her on their own. At the heart of it, Holly Blue doesn't seem to have the chops to do her job well. Every time we see something about her, like her first appearance or the first time she draws her whip, she looks terrifying indeed. But the more screen time she gets, it's clear that she's just a big dork for Blue Diamond. That she's actually not a great fighter. That she chastises the Amethyst but never really hurts them enough to warrant actually being afraid of her. This kind of smacking around behavior we've seen her display may look shocking, but upon the realization that these are soldier gems, perspectives may change. Soldiers in the show have always been grabby and slightly more heavy-handed with patting each other on the back or punching one another on the shoulder. It's like how Bismuth really smacks Garnet on the back, or how Army punched Ruby in the arm and then they dogpiled. The same thing is observed here. So Holly is suddenly less terrifying of a commander and more of a glorified nanny. And there's nothing wrong with nannies. They do a great service in helping raise children for parents who can't. But it says a lot about her dynamic with the Amethyst, especially in their off hours. Finally, I would like to talk about Holly in future episodes. One thing people have an issue with is Holly's threat to have the crystal gems shattered. But let's review what we know about Holly and see the kind of weight her threat carried. First, despite her position, or even because of it, she feels powerless. She adores the diamonds and to some extent creates things that add to their lore. In this case, shattering is her default helpless call. It's an admittance that she doesn't have the agency or the capability to really do anything. She's like that annoying person who always threatens a lawsuit when things don't go their way, but never follows through because there's never anything worth suing for in the first place and they know it. Holly is upset, but not vengeful. She's tired and probably feels that she's put up with too much for one day in her usually quiet life. And by the end of it, Pearl snaps her out of her flash of anger and she sort of settles into resignation. She's slumped over and defeated. She can't even bring herself to comment on the Amethyst's passionate goodbyes. Part of her knows Blue will probably never realize 2 humans went missing from the zoo, which is why she wasn't really panicking. And there are a lot of parallels to Peridot here. Intimidating and heartless at first glance, willing to crush a baby Robonoid, and then a dork when we get down to it. Here is someone happy with Homeworld's system. Believe it or not, she likes her job. She takes pride in it and wants any visitor to see that. She acts as though she's so above the Amethyst, but they've probably had their fair share of bonding moments over the millennia they've been together. So redemption might not actually be even the right word here. Holly is happy to go where her diamond wills her to go. She's not concerned with the big picture, with systems, with Homeworld as a whole. She's just a cog in this system, and she's trying to be the best cog she can be. That limits her from realizing the harms of actions like perpetuating the zoo. She's not a mindless minion though. She actively chooses to serve Blue. And delusional isn't the first word that comes to mind when describing her precisely, because she appears to be so deliberate about her job. So reaching out to her and getting her to understand the Earth side of history probably wouldn't lead to her abandoning Homeworld. The Amethyst is likely instrumental in having her change her perspectives. Nonetheless, should redemption occur, it would likely be like Peridot in Message Received. She'd probably be more inclined towards a solution that benefits Homeworld while not destroying Earth and its life in the process. She's going to remain loyal to Homeworld, but not necessarily the harmful things they've done. That is the complexity that is Holly Blue Agate. So, after all that was said, what do you think about Holly Blue Agate? Tell me either in the comments below or join the Cartoon Universe Discord server, which I will link in the description. This server is full of Steven Universe fans who love discussing every aspect of the show. And I couldn't end this video without giving credit where credit is due. The source for this analysis goes to Poet of the Piano. As I always say, check out their Tumblr, full of many more pieces of analysis, which I will include in the description. Also, a huge thank you to the team players who wrote this Stronger Than You acoustic cover. They have created music for the channel before, and every time they do so, they do an amazing job turning these songs into something really special. Their channel will also be listed down below. Finally, as I always say, thank you Patreon supporters. If you want to get a shout out, stickers, early look at videos, and much more, then make sure to contribute by supporting the channel. That'll be all.